There we go. Okay, so this is just a system diagram that I made for a show. Now, once you, ultimately, you're not going to be passing around DWG files all the time because not everyone has got AutoCAD running on their computer and things like that. It's to share these things, you're going to want to like either get them on paper, which is what we used to do, but we hardly do that much anymore. And now it's mostly PDF, portable document format. What that stands for. So there are, let me show you how this works. So there's in AutoCAD, what you've been working so far in model space. And model space is where you draw things. And then there's paper space. And paper space is where you print or plot things. So the term plot refers to those old pen plotters, that we were talking about before. And that's still a term that gets used. So you're given a set of like usually two layouts, paper space layouts with every drawing, and it ends up looking like this. But let me let's go ahead and start this from scratch. So I'm going to just delete this thing here. That's called a viewport. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the page setup here. So I right click on that layout one, open up page setup, and you have to pick some kind of printer. And that printer has to be able to process the paper size that you're targeting, even if you're going to create a PDF. So I believe I'm going to use this, the Lexmark one that's right here. And here are the paper sizes that it will do. Most of the time, our stuff works best on tabloid, which is 11 by 17. 8.5 by 11 is pretty small to try to fit a lot of the drawings that we do. 11 by 17 is about the smallest we can go. But once you set that 11 by 17 and then click OK, it changes here in the paper space view. Now, what you're going to notice here is there's these dotted lines. Okay. See that? The dotted line, that is the printable area for this printer for this size of paper. Okay? So if you have anything, on the other side of that dotted line, it's not going to show up in the print, including if you go to PDF, because it's going to use the printer definition to do that. And that's very, very important, because if you go in and let's select a different thing, like let's just do this DWG to PDF, which is just a AutoCAD, it's a PC3 called a plotter file. And right now it's selected ANSI full bleed, 11 by 17. Full bleed means you can theoretically print anywhere in the printable area. So you have no dotted line. But of course, in real life, it's not how it works. And so you end up wanting to, if I go to the ANSI B regular 11 by 17 and pull that up, you can see how that's going to go. And you end up with a much thicker unprintable area on the left and right side of the pages. So depending on what thing you choose, that printable area is going to be different. And the reason I'm sort of like showing you all these possibilities is that when you're trying to figure out how to get your stuff onto a paper space, you got to think a little bit about what happens if I do actually want to put this on a real piece of paper. Because every once in a while, you're going to want to actually have a whole piece of paper in your hand. Sometimes it's not always practical, like in a load-in, for example, to be carrying around your laptop with the PDF open, trying to look at your files. It's sometimes better to just have a piece of paper. And so even though when you go to PDF, it doesn't really care what type of printer definition you were using, you might take that PDF and try to run it through a real printer. And if you did like that full bleed thing and then try to take that PDF file and put it through a real printer, your drawing is going to get cut off. So part of what we're going to do today is create some templates for you to use that hopefully will work on the majority of printable area definitions that you're going to encounter. Okay, so I'm going to stick to this one for now, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. This one is using the DWG to PDF, and I'm just doing the regular ANSI B, 11 by 17. All right. So I'm going to create a new layer. So I'm going to click this little button here at the bottom left of my layer list. Say new layer, and I'm going to call this viewports or viewports or something. Okay, and I'm going to make that my active layer. Now, a viewport is like a window. You're going to make a window that lets you see into model space. So now that I've made the viewports my active window, I'm going to draw a viewport. So you type viewport, V-P-O-R-T or V-P-O-R-T-S, and you can decide what you want. I'm just going to do a single viewport and click OK. And it says, okay, so you got to draw this. So say specify the first corner of this viewport. So I'm going to go up here to the top left and make sure I'm clicking inside the printable area. And I'm going to click there. And now I'm drawing this rectangle. So I'm going to go all the way down to the opposite corner and make sure I'm clicking inside the printable area. And it's now drawn this viewport. Now if I double click inside of this viewport, now I am in model space. All right. And so what I'm going to do here is I want this information to fit inside of this box. So here's what I'm going to do. Once I'm in model space, I'm going to do zoom, so Z enter. And then you want to go in and you want to find sort of a spot here where it will definitely capture all of the things you've drawn. So I'm going to go to this top left corner that's just outside of everything I've drawn. And then I'm going to drag over to the down and right, and also just make sure that everything is captured in there. And then I'm going to click, and it'll zoom to fill that space. And then to get out of the model space view, you just take your cursor outside of that, and you can double click on the paper space. You can also toggle it down here, this toggle viewport between model and paper space. You see this button? Okay. Now, part of the, this is really hard to read because it's still showing all the color. So you have a couple options here. If you go to the page setup, you can, you want to say display plot styles. Turn that on. Click OK. And then let's right click on this again and go to, and it's actually this time select print. And you get this dialog. And there's this thing here called plot styles. So there's a bunch of options here. I'm going to select monochrome.
Where did you get to print?
You go hover over the tab for the layout you're using and right click on it and select print. And the plot style currently says print as displayed, which is not what I want. But if I select monochrome and apply that to the layout, then I can cancel, and it should have done it. Why did it not do that? Yeah, I've got it says display plot styles. That's very strange. monochrome. Display. Oh, there it goes. I had to turn it off and back on again. Did you guys get that to work? I don't know why, but
Maybe you have to set it up in print first.
maybe, yeah, because once you set it up in print, then it shows up in page setup,
Yeah.
and then I could turn it off and turn it back on again, and it would show. Okay? So that is option 1. Now let me show you, I'm going to open up this other one. And I'm going to create a brand new layout. And let me get my viewports. Actually, before I do that, let me go over here and show you the other way to control color. Okay, so you can also just change the color of your layers. Okay, so if I take this and say print as displayed instead, that back actually. Give it back. Display plot styles. There we go. Okay, your other option is you just go in to your layer view and you select all the layers except for the ones that you want to have still be in color, and you just change the color to white. And now everything goes black. That's what you have to do for like the loudspeaker plots. To get the architecture to be just, monochrome, but have your loudspeakers and labels still be in color, is you just select all the layers, then deselect, while you're holding down the option key, deselect your sound layers and change all the selected ones to white, and that leaves yours in color, and then you can display it and it'll still show it in color.
But in this situation, now in model space, it's all in.
Exactly.
Color and what?
Yeah, exactly.
So is there a way to do that per layout then? I mean, I guess is it just select layout 2 has a different page setup, yeah?
Yeah, well, so in reality, you're probably going to have a lot of drawings in one file.
Yeah.
And so you can, and all the different objects will be on different layers. And so like in this case, I've gone and I've taken all the architecture layers and I have changed their color, but I've left my stuff in color.
Right.
And that way, and then if I had the system diagram over here, those would be different layers and those could still be in color. And then for that particular viewport with that layout, I could just say plot that one in monochrome.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be the way to do that.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so once you've got that, let me show you now. I'm going to go back here and turn on the plot style to monochrome and display that as well. And now once I got that, I'm going to right click and say print. And this printer called DWG to PDF, it's just a AutoCAD PDF creator, okay? And you're going to hit plot. And it says, oh, hey, I'm going to make an actual file here. Where do you want to save it? So it wants to put it in documents. You can decide where you're going to put yours. I'll hit save, and it's doing it. So now if I go over here and find that folder, there it is. I can open that up in Acrobat, and there is my PDF file. Yep. So you're gonna, in the layout, right-click on the layout and say Print. And with the printer as DWG to PDF, you just hit this button Plot, and pulls up this dialog where you save the file, and it will make it for you. And it will just create a PDF that looks like this view that you've set up, okay? Which in my case is this. Does that work?
Sorry, so what happens after you put the printer to DWG PDF and you're saying plot?
So yeah, watch. So I right-click on the layout, I say Print. I make sure that this is set to DWG to PDF, and then I just hit this button, Plot. All right. Yes?
Is there a way when you're like laying this out to make the grid go away? I noticed in the assignment where it already was, there is no grid. Just
Let's see.
so that it's not so annoying.
I don't know, actually. It might be in the properties of the viewport somewhere. Oh, is that what it is? Is grid lines are turned on? Oh,
These grid lines are so annoying.
that's where it is.
I cannot even focus enough to pretend to read
Right.
anything that's on
Oh,
here
good
to
catch.
get the right size.
Good catch, Seth. Okay. Now, so this is fine, right? And this is nice. But ultimately, you know, you're going to have when you've done a whole package worth of paperwork, you're going to have a lot of different drawings. You're going to want to know what they are. You're going to want titles on these things. And in drafting language, these are called title blocks. Okay. So let me show you how a title block works. So I'm going to create a new layout. I'm just going to hit this little plus button down here to create a new layout. I'm going to go ahead and delete this standard viewport. And there is already a layer called border in my case, so that's what I'm going to use. But if there's not one, you make one. Make something called border. And I would suggest having that layer be white. And once you're there, let's go into page setup, and I'm going to get the DWG to PDF, and I'm going to get the 11 by 17, the NCB, and click OK so I can get the right paper size. Now watch. This is something you're not going to be able to do right now with me because I'm going to teach you how to do it still. But watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Insert Block. Now here are all the blocks that are in this file, okay? Blocks is not something we're going to get into a ton of detail on in this class, but blocks are another way to reuse things that you have drawn. Right? So here, because I built this off of the USITT file template, we've got these blocks in that file. And you can take these and just plop them right in. That's what a block does, okay? So like I can go into model space here, and I can say, oh, I need an amplifier. And you can stick it in there. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Right? So rather than just having them over there and just copying them from there, you can make a block library. But in this case, I'm going to do something different. So here's my blocks window, and this is a change that they have made. And I need to go over here and say, browse to insert a drawing as a block into the current drawing. See this? So I'm going to go and I'm going to find a drawing that I already have, which is going to be here, 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 and I'm going to pull up DWG, and I've got this thing called border tabloid. And that's just this border that I have made. So I'm going to click open. And it says, where do you want to put it? Specify insertion point. And I'm going to go ahead and stick it there. Now watch, see, it pulls up this prompt. And it says, what is the drawing number? And I can say, all right, well, this is drawing number 5 out of what I think is going to be 20. The drawing title is going to be System Diagram. Name of the show is, what's the show? What's your favorite show? Anybody? Spam-A-Lot. Spam-A-Lot. Who's the drafter? Me. And I default to me because it's my title block, so it's probably going to be me, but maybe it wouldn't be. What theater is this in? Well, this was in the Stevens Center. Who is the designer? Defaults to me. Scale. I default to no scale because most of the time we plot things in without scale. But if you did plot something to scale, plotting to scale means that you're printing this onto a piece of paper and there is a ratio involved in the scale of these lines. So it would be like for every 1/4 inch on this actual piece of paper, that represents a foot in real life. Okay? And you would want to put that in there so that if someone did get a scale ruler and stick it on that piece of paper, they could measure and know how big things were in real life. Most of my stuff, I default to no scale because very rarely do we do scale. So I'm going to click next and to get the other page, and it says the date that this was plotted, and it's automatically putting in this date. The file name, and it's automatically pulling the name of the file, and then the school or the company or whatever. So my prompt is what's the name of the school, and I click confirm. And look what it did. It went in and automatically populated all that stuff. Now, then what I'm going to do is I'll go back over to my layers here, and let's go to viewports. And I'm going to draw a viewport, a single one, and I'm going to start at this corner here, and I'm going to object snap track off of there, the other end of my little border, and I'm going to try to fill this printable area. Okay, and then I'm going to go into model space. I'm going to zoom, and I'm going to try to do the same thing I did before, which is get everything captured. There we go. Flip back to paper space, and then I'll go into my page setup and set up monochrome and display. There it is. Oh, look how pretty that is. Right? Now that looks like something. So how do you make those? That's today's task. Is how do you make, those are called dynamic blocks. And a dynamic block is just an AutoCAD drawing that you set up with changeable attributes so that when you reuse it and insert it into a drawing, it asks you for those changeable bits of information. All right, let's do it. So I'm going to make a new drawing using the acad.dwt template. Okay, and here we are. Now, you start here by drawing kind of the grid, the layout of what you're going to do. And before you can do that, you sort of have to decide what size of paper you're going to work on. So I'm going to create a new layer here, and I'm going to call this layer borders. And I'll make that my active layer. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle starting at 0, 0. And then the other corner, so this is going to be my 11 by 17 border. Now, I could just draw a rectangle that is 11 inches by 17 inches. Okay, but that is not ever going to be your printable area. So you kind of have to make sure you're drawing this smaller, a little bit smaller than the size of paper you're going to do it in. So I'm going to say 10 by 16, right? I'm going to shrink this thing by an inch to make sure that it's hopefully always going to fit in the printable area. So I'm going to say this will be 16 on the X, comma 10 on the Y, and it gives me that little rectangle. And this is purely a guide for myself at this point. That is the size I'm trying to fit everything in. Now, there's two types of title blocks that you're going to see around there. There's going to be the kind that are down here, like in the bottom right, and you're going to end up with a little thing like this, and then you're going to go and do all your lines and everything else. Sometimes that's really good, but more often, the ones I see more commonly are ones that go all the way on like this right side of the page. It just takes up less drawing space that way than some weird shape, down here on the right that you have to kind of like draw everything around. So I'm just going to define for myself how wide I want this to be on 11 by 17. So I'm going to take a line here, and I'm going to snap track off of this. That would be an inch. This would be 2 inches. Yeah, I'm going to say 2 inches. Okay. And I'm going to draw that line there. So I'm going to just give up 2 inches of my paper space on the right side for this title block. Okay. And then you can start kind of figuring out how you want to lay this out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide this in half by drawing a line here across these midpoints. Give me a frame of reference here. And then maybe I want another one halfway across there. So I'm going to draw myself a reference point, a reference line from here to there, so I have something to snap to. And I'll do a midpoint for that. And then I can delete that reference line. Okay, so I'm just kind of setting up a little grid here of how I think I'm going to do this. I want to have this area down here for the drawing number, and that's going to be a square. So I'm going to go ahead and make a square there, of 2 inches. And I'll trim out this piece of it. So you can kind of see how I'm kind of getting where I want it to be. Looking at this now, though, I think these two things will be like the drawing title and the name of the project. I probably want a little bit more room than that for this. So maybe what I'll do is I'm going to give myself another reference line here and go there. I can delete that and extend that out to there. And then, and this is the actual details of this are up to you. It's your title block. You can lay it out however you want. I'm just kind of showing you how I would think through this a little bit. So now what I'll do is I'll create some other lines here. let's see. I think maybe I'm going to have 3 rows. So what is 2 divided by 3?
26. Yep.
Yeah.
2/3.
So I'm going to do a line, and I'll track off of here and say 0.667. Put that there. I'll mirror this line across that midpoint. There you go. So I've got kind of a rough delineation here of where stuff is going to go. Okay, and you know, don't read too much into like what I'm drawing here. You can do your own thing. Some people like to do it the other way so that things are the text will be horizontal on this tall line. Some people like that, so you don't have to like do this when you're looking at the paper. You can do that if you want. It's really kind of up to you. This is the assignment where you don't have to do exactly what I said, right? You can exercise a little bit of your own creativity here and how you want to lay this out. But generally speaking, there's some information you're going to want to have. So let's go ahead and set up some text styles here, because I want to have little labels in for each of these little boxes for what they're going to be. So I'm going to pull up my text styles, and I'm going to make a new one, and this will be called border small. Now, for your borders and your title blocks, I would suggest using actual true type fonts, because this is not text that is going to be scaling dynamically, right? Like the stuff that you do in model space. And so you can control how big this is going to be in real life, and therefore you can take advantage of some different types of fonts than you can with when you're drawing a model space. So I would, for something this small, I would avoid serifs, because serifs don't render very well when they're small. But I can just take something like Arial, for example, which is fine, and I'll apply that, and I'll make a new layer here, and I'll say this will be called small labels. In fact, I'll call it a border small labels. Let's make that here, and text style will be border small. And let's start doing something here. So I'm going to do a text.
Could you repeat how you changed the text?
How I changed the text?
Like what you just changed with it?
I opened up text styles, so I typed style, enter, and I just pulled this up, and I just created a new style by hitting the plus button. I called it whatever I want, and then I picked a font and hit apply.
For me, the border small isn't appearing. Did you hit something to make it appear?
I typed that. Yeah, you just type that in, and I click apply. Yeah, there you go. All right. So once I've got that, now I'm just going to make one of these text, and I'll just stick it there for now. The height, I don't want this to be too terribly tall, so let's try like 0.2. Rotation angle 0 for now, and let's type this. So this will be drawing title. Yeah, that's way too big. So the height, let's try 0.1. That might work. So now I'll rotate this. So I'm going to type RO for rotate, enter. Specify base point, and I will just click there. And I'll make this go vertical like that. And then for the purpose of lining these things up, I'm going to give myself a couple of construction lines that are just a little bit off from the edges. There we go. And now I can take this label and I can move it, but I need to kind of change the justification of this thing. So I want this to be top left is going to be the insertion point. So now I can grab it there and snap it to that intersection. And then I will copy this construction line using the same reference point. And then I can copy this label. So far, this is stuff you already know how to do. Okay, we've been talking about this, okay? But this I'm going to change to, this will be project name or show name or whatever. So you would keep going in and putting these little labels into things. Now, let me show you how to do the dynamic text, okay? So this is where you're going to want to watch really carefully. So I'm going to make another layer, and I'm going to call this attributes. And I'm going to now, so I'm going to set that up. I'll make that my active layer. In fact, I better just call it, border attributes, just so that I don't end up with someone else's layer. Because remember, these layers are going to get imported into some other drawing. You want to make sure you're not using a layer that someone else is already going to be using. So once that's the active one, I'm going to type the command ATT or ATTDEF for attribute definition. So ATT, enter. And it brings up this little dialog. Okay? And the tag here is just like basically what are you going to call it? And no one but you is ever going to see this name. This is purely just an organizational tag that you're going to put on it. So, but it will be the thing that shows up before anything gets, if you don't put a default value, then the attribute definition will show up in the text before you change it. Okay? So I'm going to call this drawing title. The prompt is the question that it's going to ask you in that dialog box. So what do you want to ask yourself? And I'm just going to, you can just say, drawing title? Question mark? Yeah, I've found, like you could see in my demo I did before, some of my questions were too long and they got truncated. So you don't have a lot of room there. Suggested value, this is if there's a default value that you want to use, you can go ahead and use that. And I'm going to, just for purposes of demonstrating something here, I'm going to pick a really long title of a project. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum. That's an actual Stephen Sondheim musical. Okay. I need a text style for this, which I haven't set up yet. So right now it says border small. I probably should have set that text style up first. So let me cancel that and do that real quick. Style. And I'll call this border big. And I'm going to just keep the Arial for now, but this will be bigger text, and therefore maybe you could do something fancier with serifs or something if you thought it would look nice, but I'll just keep it as Arial for now. Let's try this again. So ATT, this will be drawing title, the prompt, drawing title, question mark, no suggested value. Text style is going to be border big. Now, the justification, this is very important because this is a dynamic block, and you want this to be able to work for anything. Any title that you could possibly type in there. And you don't ever want it to be outside of the box that it has to sit in. And so for attributes, you get this special justification style called fit. And what fit will do is it will distort or whatever, or stretch, or do whatever it's got to do to that text to make sure it fills that box and doesn't go outside of it. And for the text height, here's what you're going to do. You see this little button here next to that text height? You see this? Everybody looking? This little button next to text height? I'm going to click that, and it says I can pick a height. And I know where this is going to sit, so I'm going to go down here and find basically, oh, it tracked off of there. That's weird. So I'm going to say that. Oh, it ended up being 0. That's because I'm doing it horizontal, aren't I? I'll try that again. I'll just pick something that looks about right here. I'll say that tall. We'll see how that fits. Okay. Then I'm going to save. And I got to type this in. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum. And I'll hit save. The tag may not contain spaces. That's right. No space. Drawing title. Okay. Specify first endpoint. I'm going to put it basically there. Specify the second endpoint. That's going to be over here. And there it is. And it's super squished because my height was all off. So I can go in and select it, and I can change the height down here in the properties. So I can make this 0.75 maybe. There we go. And then I'm going to take this and get it in just the right spot. So you see what it's done here? It's making it fit inside that box. So you can do that, and it's just displaying the tag right now, but when you insert this as a block, it's going to ask you for a prompt. What's it going to be? And whatever you type in there, it will scale it to fit in there, which is super handy. So I want to show you a couple other things, because there was, in my example, get rid of that line. in my example, I had those two things that were like the date and the file name, and those are called fields. So you're going to type in field, and it pulls up this thing, insert field. And a field is basically, that's a term from databases. And so your AutoCAD file has a database built into it, a database of all different kinds of things. So let's say I want to do something that's like a date, the date that this thing was printed or plotted. Okay, so I'm going to do date and time, and you have four options: the creation date, like the date that this file was created; the date, like just today; the plot date, or the save date. I'm going to do plot date because the plot date will automatically update that field when you hit the plot button. So you hit the plot button and it is going to say, the button was hit on this day at this time. And it will automatically fill that in for you. Now, if time is important to you, you can put that in there. So you can decide what format you want to do here. But there's you get a lot of options here. So like you could say, Monday, February 27th, 2023 at 11:53:35. Right, that's not what I just need the date. So I'm just going to do this regular date field like that. But you can get all the way down to minutes and seconds of when you hit this button. Now here's the important part. You see this little thing here where it says field expression? That is the code that lets you access that information. So I am going to select that and copy that value. Okay, just select it, right click on it, and say copy. And now I'm going to go in and create a new attribute. So ATT. The tag is going to be plot date. And the prompt will be plot date, question mark. And then the default value is going to be that field code. So I'm just going to paste that in there. And then I will go ahead, in this case, rotate this 90 degrees in the actual thing. It says, where do you want it? I'm going to put it here. And that says plot date. So I'm going to go ahead and set my height on that. Let's see if 0.5 hits. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. And the justification needs to be fit, which means I'm going to need to rotate this. Go, and then I can squish it to fit in that spot. Okay? And that will give me a automatically updating field that will insert the date in there. Okay? So let me show you here.
How did you squish it there?
How did I what?
How did you squish it in there?
So I just went and grabbed this little handle and moved it to fit where I wanted it. Did you change the justification to fit first? Yeah.
In the attribute definition panel?
Yeah, you have. Yeah, so in attribute definition, you're going to get out of there. You do it in attribute definition. You can do fit there, or you can do it after you've inserted it and you go to the properties. Either way, you just do fit. Okay, so those are the basic ideas. Now let me show you what the final product ends up looking like when you're done. So here is my little border file. I'm going to open it up here. There's the actual thing. Okay. So I've got all these different attributes. And you can go in and double click on them and you'll see it says, okay, here's the tags and everything. And if you want to see this different stuff, you can. But this is ultimately what you're going to end up with. Let me see if it actually, hang on, I want to see if it shows me something. Oh, yes. Okay. Look, this is new. You see where it says default? You can actually access the attribute definition. Look at that. I can go in and put that plot date in directly from the attribute thing. Okay, do it that way. That's way faster. That's way faster. Do it that way for sure. And then it will actually show up differently. So yes, definitely do it that way. So when you're making the attribute, click that little button. But this is what you end up with, is something that looks like this. Now what I ended up doing, and this is very important, is once I got it all done the way I wanted, I went ahead and deleted this border here, and I redrew this rectangle. And now I'm going to take this whole thing and move it to 0, 0. Oops. Specify base point. Zero, comma, 0. Still not doing it. Weird. Okay, well, let me do this. I'll just draw a line there. Yeah, I could just move the ECS, I suppose, but I'm just going to draw a line there that I know is at 0, 0, and then I'll go snap to that. This is very important. Move that to 0, 0, because then when you go to insert this into another drawing, where you click in that new drawing is going to be where the thing shows up. But if the border is not sitting on 0, 0, then the actual block will show up in a location relative from where you clicked to where it was from 0, 0 in the source file. So if you look at mine, it's on 0, 0. Okay? All right, so this is my 11 by 17 one, or my tabloid one. And here's all the sort of values I have. I did drawing number 1 of 1. Now the big one and the little one, those are both attributes that prompt, for values. Okay. These little labels are just labels. Okay. But you can see kind of how this all works. Now I've got these all set as fit justification, so they stay in place and they won't go outside of the border. And I've paid very close attention to making sure that these things don't end up touching any lines. Okay, very important. So I've got a scale, I've got theater name, I've got the name of the designer, I've got the date that it was plotted, I've got the file name, which is super useful. Because if you have this PDF file and you pass it around enough times, you're going to lose track of where that came from. And if the file name is in the title block, you can then figure out where that came from. You can go search for that file name and you'll find the actual DWG file on your computer. So I really like having the file name in that spot. Who drafted it, the school or company or whatever you want to put in there. Okay. Now, once you do that, close that. That's how you get to that point where you can then insert it into a piece of paper space. Oh, that's why, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and select my 11 by 17. And then I can insert the block. Now, one thing you might notice, okay, got it, yes. Oh, this is the other file. Yeah. Look at that. There's my border already in there. So I'm going to double click on that and I can just plop it in there. Now what I want you to do is I want you to go to your template file. So let me show you how that's going to be done. You're going to go to, okay, here's the little template file that I made. So I'm going to go open project, or sorry, not open project, just regular open. I'm going to go get my little template and I'm going to actually open the DWT. So I'm actually editing the DWT here. And I'm going to put my borders or my title blocks into the block library for this template. So I'm going to go and get that. Let's see here. No, I want this. This, that, okay? And I'm just gonna like stick it in there somewhere and just take those default values. But now it's sitting there in my block library, okay? And so I can go ahead and I can erase this if I want, and it's still sitting there in the block library. And now I'll have it available to insert, right? Make sense? So that I want you to make your 3 title blocks. You're going to do one for each size of paper. So I want an 8.5 by 11 sized title block. I want an 11 by 17 sized title block, and I want a. Sorry, that's an error. It should be. It's 24 by 36. For some reason, it says by 26 down here. That's a mistake. That's not a real paper size. 24 by 36. 'Cause sometimes you make a really big drawing and you're going to need it on a big piece of paper. So I make a 24 by 36 size title block. Stick them all in as blocks in your template file. And give me your template file with those blocks in it. Give me the 3 title blocks as DWG files so I can see how you made them. And then I want to see a PDF file that has your system diagram from assignment 3, the annotated system diagram that you actually like edited the labels for and everything, and your loudspeaker plots from this assignment. Okay? And you're going to put those into Paperspace and put your tile block on it and create the PDFs and upload that PDF file. Now let me show you very quickly how to do that part of it. So here is a PDF, right, of the one thing. There's a few different ways to do this, and there's a lot of shortcuts that some people will show you. The shortcuts are, they can cause some problems, so be careful. But let me go in here and show you how I would do it. So I'll go in here and find, so here's another little PDF, right? So I'm just going to take this, and when I'm in Acrobat, I open up these page thumbnails, I'm just going to drag this in there. okay, and build it that way. That's how I like to do it. There are some shortcuts. There are some in AutoCAD. You can do like these package drawing. You can batch publish, all that kind of stuff. I would stay away from that stuff right now until you get a lot more confident with this. But for this project, I would just plot individual PDF files at first, and then just pick the first one and then drag the other ones into it, and save that as a regular file. And now it's a multi-page PDF file, okay? And that's what I want you to upload, is a single PDF file that has those handful of however many drawings that would be, which should be the system diagram and your 3 loudspeaker plots. So your section view and your 2 ground plan views. So it's going to be a total of 4 pages in this PDF file. All of them should have your title block with a viewport for the drawing itself. Okay? So the actual work here to do is to make those title blocks. That's the work. That's what's going to take you a few minutes. Once you've got that, then just use them as blocks in Paperspace to create your layouts and print to PDF. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Just an AutoCAD question. When you create a viewport view
Uh-huh.
in Paperspace, does it add a border then?
So
Or does it not actually have the outline of the viewport?
you can decide.
Okay.
So it's possible.
Well, the standards are that you need the border.
Yeah.
Use
So
the border.
yeah, you can. Yeah, you should. You should have a border. The thing that I have noticed is
That is a tiny border.
it is, but that is based on the layer.
And the line weight.
Yeah. So if you go into the layer, you can set the line weight for that layer, which would be,
To the left.
yes, here we go.
0.5,
So
right, is-
yeah, you can make it as thick as you want, but you will draw it, you know, and it is possible to get it to not show the border in the viewport, and you basically do that by manipulating the layer, and then it won't show it, but it will show what the contents of it. But I prefer to just leave it, because then I can use that. I just make my title block be a separate thing, and then I just use the viewport to fill the rest of that border around that goes around the page. I find that to be much easier. Because
I was gonna say, I was hoping that it actually did show the border.
It does.
I couldn't tell entirely for sure.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So I can show you, but if I actually plot this, it'll do it. See, it's showing the whole border
Oh,
there,
okay.
right?
And it does it at that line weight then?
Yep.
When it prints it?
It should, yeah.
Okay.
But before you start messing with line weights, I would just try it. So if I put
Yeah.
this at default and plot it again,
Well, it's true.
yeah. So it does look a little bit thinner than
Yeah, it looks quite.
what I had. So I might want to go in and tweak that, right?
Yeah.
That's so you can go in and mess around with that line weight if you want to.
Okay, and the same thing with the title blocks, we can just make those
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And default is 0.25 millimeters, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So if I do that as 0.25 for the layer, then let's see what it does. Plot, replace. Oh, it still didn't. That's strange.
I can mess with
Yeah, you can mess around with it, but it might be a matter of some properties in the viewport.
it. Yeah.
Oh yes, here it is. So the viewport itself has a defined line weight.
Oh, and that's where I want to define.
Yeah. So actually, if I just set it to default, or actually if I do it I'll do it by layer and have the layer be the default.
Okay.
Then it should look the same. Let's try that now.
It's like 0.15 is awful thin for
It is awfully thin.
what it should be the most. The
Yeah.
thickest line on the piece of paper.
Yep. Okay, does that look any better? Not really, actually, huh? That is weird.
Oh, I can mess it up.
Yeah,
Let's see if it works.
I'll sit and play with it too for a minute while you guys work. But so this is a good example of why you should not underestimate the amount of time it will take you this step. And a lot of people really, they don't give themselves enough time for this step. And that's when they start cutting corners and finding shortcuts and stuff, and then suddenly all the work they did ends up just looking terrible on a PDF file because they rushed that process. And how it looks on the page that's how you're judged, right? That's how your work is judged, is by how good of a job you did in the last step, okay? So make sure you're giving yourself, in real life when you're doing these, give yourself plenty of time to get to do these layouts and these plot views, because getting it right is super important, but it takes longer than you will. Other questions?
Scaling it down to the paper size wouldn't work with it. Just taking one and then stretching your that probably doesn't react as well as I hope it does.
You can do that a little bit,
Yeah, but not.
but you end up, because of the text often doesn't scale proportionally the way you want it to, and so you end up having to go and tweak those labels anyway.
That's what I figured.
Um,
It's just as easy to just.
Yeah, but you can try it and see.
I probably will because
Yeah.
that's what I do with my firm.
But I will tell you this. When I was in graduate school, I made a title block in my AutoCAD class. I used that title block for about 18 years. I never touched it again until I started teaching this class. And I was like, oh, I got to teach them how to do title blocks. And let me go get mine. And I was like, oh, this is I haven't touched this in a very long time. Let me update this and fix this. And so don't be afraid to put some work into this, because that it's going to be time well spent, because once you get this, if you can get this right the first time, you're never going to touch it again for a very long time. You'll just use this thing over and over and over and over and over again. So try to see that long range view here. If you do this right, it really could be just fine for a very long time for you. Other questions? Okay. Well, you got, looks like a little over a half hour to start hacking away at this thing. So get to work on it.